All characters and events are fictional. Any resemblance is coincidental. And if you believe that every lie eventually leaves proof, stay with me. The first envelope wasn't the problem. It was the second one. The second one is what made my brother stop smiling, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Because when I walked into that office, I wasn't expecting revenge. I was expecting confirmation. Confirmation that my mother had chosen. Again. The conference room smelled like dust and old money. Dark wood shelves, leather chairs, heavy curtains that blocked out the sun like grief needed privacy. My brother Ethan was already seated, relaxed, one ankle resting over his knee, fingers tapping slowly against the armrest, like he was waiting for a delayed flight, not the distribution of our mother's entire estate. He didn't look at me when I entered. He didn't need to. He already believed he had won. My name is Ava Hart. I'm 36 years old, and my entire life I have been the responsible one, the quiet daughter, the organized one, the one who handled paperwork, appointments, bills, care plans, while Ethan handled visibility, stories, charm, sympathy, and sympathy pays well when there's money involved. Our mother passed 3 weeks ago, sudden cardiac arrest. That's what the official report said. What it didn't say was that she had changed lawyers 2 months before she died, or that she had started locking her bedroom door at night, or that she stopped letting Ethan handle her finances. But Ethan didn't know that I knew those things. He only knew one thing. He was the golden son, and golden sons inherit. The lawyer, Mr. Callahan, cleared his throat softly. He was in his early 60s, sharp suit, sharp eyes, the kind of man who notices when someone interrupts before they realize they've done it. "Thank you both for coming," he said. Ethan leaned back further. "Let's just get through it," he muttered. He didn't sound nervous. He sounded bored. That's confidence built on assumption. Callahan opened the first envelope, the standard one, the official will. He began reading. Real estate holdings, investment accounts, liquid assets, and just like I expected, the majority of the estate was assigned to Ethan, 80%. I received 20, plus personal items, jewelry, a watch, our father's study desk. Ethan exhaled through his nose slowly, that subtle smirk forming at the corner of his mouth. There it was, that look. The one that says "I told you so." He finally glanced at me, waiting. For tears, for protest, for visible defeat. I gave him nothing, because what Ethan didn't know was that our mother never did anything in a single move. And when Callahan finished reading the first document, he didn't close the folder. He paused and reached into his briefcase again. Ethan noticed. The smirk faded, just slightly. "There is," Callahan said calmly, "a second document." Ethan laughed under his breath. "What is this, a bonus round?" Callahan did not respond. He placed a second envelope on the table. Sealed, thicker, older. The paper was slightly yellowed, dated. Ethan leaned forward now. "Just a little." "What's that?" he asked. Callahan looked at him. This, he said, was not to be opened unless certain conditions were met. The air changed, subtly, like the pressure before a storm. Ethan's voice sharpened. "What conditions?" Callahan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me, and for the first time that day, I saw understanding in his eyes, not sympathy, not pity. Understanding. "This document," he continued, "was prepared separately, and it overrides the primary will under specific legal triggers." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Triggers?" he repeated. "Yes." Silence stretched across the table. And in that silence, I remembered something my mother said 3 months before she died. We were sitting in her kitchen. She was quieter than usual, watching the clock. "Ava," she said softly, "if someone thinks they've already won, don't argue." I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer directly. She just smiled and said, "Wait." Back in the office, Ethan's tapping fingers had stopped. Callahan broke the seal, slowly, deliberately, and the sound of that paper tearing was the first crack in my brother's certainty. The sound of that envelope opening didn't echo. It pressed, like the room itself was listening. Ethan's smirk didn't disappear immediately. It tightened, subtle, controlled, the way someone controls a reaction when they don't want to reveal that something feels off. Callahan unfolded the second document carefully. "It was your mother's instruction," he began, "that this letter be read only if there were signs of financial manipulation within 90 days prior to her passing." The words didn't land all at once. They sank, slow, heavy. Ethan blinked. "Manipulation?" he repeated. Callahan didn't look at him. He looked at the document. Specifically, he continued, "Unauthorized access, transfers, or changes to designated beneficiaries." Silence. And then Ethan laughed. Short, dismissive. "That's ridiculous," he said. She was paranoid at the end. "Everyone knows that." Everyone, that word. He used it often, as if repetition could turn assumption into fact. Callahan turned the page. "Over the past 60 days," he said calmly, "there were 3 attempted beneficiary amendments submitted electronically from an IP address registered to Mr. Ethan Hart." The room didn't explode. It didn't need to. Ethan went still, not shocked. "Not yet. Still." "That's impossible," he said. Too quickly. Callahan slid a printed report across the table. Time-stamped, detailed, cold. There it was. 3 digital submissions, all rejected automatically because they lacked required in-person verification. My brother leaned forward now. No smirk. "No," he said, slower this time. "That's not what happened." But he didn't deny the attempts. He denied the interpretation. "That's how people lie when they're trained to." "I was helping her," he continued. "She asked me to manage her online accounts. She didn't understand the new system." Callahan finally looked at him. "Your mother revoked your financial access privileges 8 weeks before her death." Ethan froze. That was the first true fracture. 8 weeks. I remembered the night she called me, late, whispering, "Ava, do you still have that accountant friend?" I asked why. She said she just wanted someone to review something. She never specified what. Now I knew. Callahan continued reading. "In the event that unauthorized attempts are made to alter the distribution structure, the primary will becomes void." Void, that word hit harder than the rest. Ethan stood abruptly. "You're saying I get nothing?" he demanded. Callahan's tone did not change. "I'm saying the estate is redirected." "Redirected?" Ethan's eyes snapped to me. For the first time that day, there was no superiority in them. There was calculation, fear disguised as anger. "What did you do?" he asked me. "Not Callahan, me." I didn't answer. Because I hadn't done anything, not yet. Callahan turned another page. "In such a case, the entirety of the estate shall be transferred to Ava Hart, conditional upon further review." Further review? That meant this wasn't finished. Ethan laughed again, but it wasn't amused. It was sharp. "You think this is some kind of setup?" he said. "You think she would disinherit me over a website error?" Website error. That's what he was calling it. Callahan placed a final document on the table. "This isn't the only trigger." The air shifted again. Ethan's breathing changed. Shallower now. "There is a second clause," Callahan said. "One that applies if there is reasonable suspicion that her death was influenced by financial coercion." The words hung there. Uncomfortable, unstable. Ethan stared at him. "You're accusing me of murder?" Callahan did not answer that directly. "I am stating that your mother required a post-mortem financial audit to be conducted before final asset release." Ethan's face drained slowly. Not white, not dramatic, just thinner. "She died of cardiac arrest," he said quietly. "Yes," Callahan agreed. "But the timing of attempted asset transfers, revocation of your access, and a newly drafted beneficiary structure 2 months prior raises procedural obligations. Procedural, not emotional. Procedural, that's how this was being framed, and that was far worse. Ethan turned to me again. "You knew about this?" he asked. I held his gaze. No, that was the truth. But what I did know was that our mother never feared strangers. She feared betrayal, and she prepared for it. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "This is insane," he muttered. But he wasn't yelling, because yelling would confirm panic, and panic would confirm vulnerability. Callahan folded his hands. "Until the audit is completed," he said, "all accounts remain frozen." Frozen. Ethan's jaw tightened. "How long?" he demanded. 30 to 60 days. 60 days without access to the estate, without liquidity, without leverage. That's when I saw something shift in him. Not grief, not outrage, urgency. And urgency only comes when someone needs something immediately. He stood up fully now. "This is a joke," he said. "I'm not sitting through some witch hunt." Callahan didn't flinch. "You are free to leave," he replied. "But doing so may be interpreted as non-cooperation." Non-cooperation. Another quiet threat. Ethan's eyes flicked to the door, then back to the table, then to me, and in that split second, I understood something terrifying. He wasn't afraid of losing the money. He was afraid of the audit, and audits don't scare innocent people. They scare people who know what they'll find. He sat back down, slowly, and that's when I felt it. Not triumph, not yet. Something colder. Because if our mother anticipated this, if she prepared this envelope, if she feared financial coercion, then the question wasn't just about money, it was about pressure, and pressure leaves marks, sometimes invisible ones. Callahan closed the second envelope folder. "This concludes today's reading," he said. But nothing was concluded. Not really. Ethan stood without looking at me, and as he reached the door he said something, so quietly it almost didn't register. "You don't understand what you've just done." I watched him leave, and for the first time since walking into that room, I wasn't thinking about inheritance. I was thinking about the last time I saw my mother alive. She had been tired, yes, but not afraid, until the day after she revoked his access, that day. She asked me to change her phone password. She said she couldn't remember it. She just didn't want him knowing it. I stood in that office long after Ethan left, and Callahan spoke softly. "She trusted you," he said. I nodded. "She trusted you," he repeated, "to finish what she couldn't finish." That word stayed with me. Because inheritance wasn't the prize. The truth was, and if there was even a possibility that my brother tried to force something, financially, legally, or worse, then this wasn't about winning. It was about proving, and proving takes time. But Ethan made one mistake. He thought the second envelope was the attack. It wasn't, it was the warning. The real evidence was still waiting. I didn't go home after the will reading. I went to my mother's house, not to grieve, to look. Because once you work in compliance long enough, you learn something simple. If someone panics at the word audit, it's because there's something to find. The house was quiet in a way that felt different now. Not empty, erased. Ethan had already been there. I could tell drawers slightly misaligned, files stacked too neatly, the scent of his cologne lingering faintly in the hallway. He always smelled like cedar and ambition. I walked into her study. The desk was exactly as she left it, or almost. Her laptop was gone. That made my stomach tighten. My mother never traveled with her laptop. She barely left the house in her final months. So why was it missing? I opened her desk drawers. Bank statements, handwritten notes, receipts clipped with precision. She had always been organized. But something was off. The folders labeled estate, final, were thinner than they should have been. I sat down in her chair, and I forced myself not to assume. Assumption is the enemy of truth. I called Callahan. Was her laptop logged in during the attempted transfers? I asked. He paused. Yes, he said. From her home IP address. That detail unsettled me more than if it had been external, because it meant one of two things. Either she authorized access, or someone used her device. I hung up. And I did something I hadn't done in years. I walked into the kitchen. The memory hit me immediately. 8 weeks ago. She was standing by that same counter, staring at her phone. Ava, she had said quietly, if something looks official, that doesn't mean it is. I had laughed at the time. What happened? I asked. Nothing, she said. Just learning. Learning. Now that word felt different. I checked the router, still blinking, still connected. I flipped it over, and there it was. A small strip of tape, peeling slightly, under it, a second login code. She had changed her network credentials and hidden them. From Ethan, my heart began to pound, because that meant she suspected something. I searched the cabinet above the refrigerator. That's where she kept old electronics, chargers, backup drives. And I found it. A small external hard drive, labeled only with a date, 2 months before she died. I sat at the kitchen table, plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, files opened, folders, organized, precise, bank activity logs, screenshots, email exports. My mother had been collecting something, not for emotion, for documentation. And then I found the folder titled E, just one letter. Inside were copies of messages, not affectionate ones, not casual ones, financial ones. Ethan communicating with a private wealth consultant, discussing accelerated liquidity, discussing beneficiary, restructuring, discussing expedited authority. And then a message that made my hands go cold. If she delays any further, we'll need a medical route. Medical route. I stared at that phrase for a long time. Was that a figure of speech, or something worse? I scrolled further. There were medical appointment confirmations, cardiology visits, follow-ups. Ethan had been present at several, more than I had known. And then something unexpected. A message from Ethan to the consultant. Never mind. She revoked my access. Timestamped. 8 weeks ago. The same week she changed her network credentials. The same week she asked me about official-looking emails. I leaned back in the chair, because this didn't look like murder. It looked like pressure, financial pressure, desperation. But then I saw the next document, a scanned letter, from her cardiologist. Clear, simple, stable condition, no immediate risk. Yet she died suddenly. Cardiac arrest, natural. But sudden. I closed my eyes. I needed air, because this is where paranoia can take over, and paranoia destroys credibility. So I did what I always do. I separated emotion from pattern. What did we know? Ethan attempted beneficiary changes. He lost access, he panicked, he explored alternative leverage. But was there evidence of harm? Not yet. And that's when doubt crept in. Maybe this was just greed, not violence. Maybe the medical route was legal guardianship, not something darker. I almost felt relief, almost, until I opened the last file on the drive. A voice memo, dated 3 weeks before her death. I clicked it. Her voice filled the kitchen, weak, but steady. If something happens unexpectedly, she said softly, Ava needs to review the accounts before anything is finalized. She paused, and she needs to look at the insurance policy. Insurance. I didn't remember any recent changes to her policy. But Ethan handled most of her paperwork toward the end, because she didn't like technology. That's what he said. I searched her file cabinet. Insurance documents were missing, every copy gone. That's when the relief disappeared, and something colder took its place. Not accusation, direction. I checked her email archive on the drive, and there it was. A policy amendment, filed 1 month before her death. Beneficiary, Ethan Hart, amount, significantly increased. Premium payments automated. I stared at the coverage amount. It was enough to explain urgency, enough to explain leverage, enough to explain why an audit scared him. But it still didn't prove anything violent. It proved motive, and motive alone isn't enough. That's when my phone buzzed. Callahan. "Ava," he said carefully, "there's been a complication." My stomach tightened. "What kind?" The insurance company flagged the policy. Flagged? For what? There was an attempt to initiate a claim the morning before her official time of death. The room went silent. "What?" I whispered. "The claim was not processed," he continued, "because the hospital had not yet issued documentation." Morning before, I replayed the timeline in my head. She was alive that morning. I had spoken to her. She said she was tired, but alive. "You're saying someone tried to claim life insurance before she was dead?" I asked. "Yes." My heart began to pound harder. "Who filed it?" I said. Callahan paused. The online portal was accessed from her home network. Home network, which meant one of two things. Either she initiated something herself, or someone in that house did. And suddenly, the audit wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about sequence. Sequence is everything. Because if someone expects death before it happens, that's not greed, that's anticipation. I sat back down slowly, because now the story wasn't linear. It was layered. And Ethan's panic at the will reading? It wasn't about money, it was about timing. He thought everything had already been processed. He thought nothing would be reviewed. He thought the second envelope was the worst of it. He was wrong, because what he didn't know was that my mother didn't just leave evidence of attempted transfers. She left something else, something I hadn't opened yet. And if the insurance claim was attempted before her death, then someone expected it. An expectation like that isn't coincidence. I didn't call Ethan. Not yet. When someone makes a mistake that big, you don't confront them immediately. You give them space. Because people who believe they're safe make one more move. And I needed that move. I drove home and spread everything across my dining table. Insurance amendment. Attempted early claim log. Voice memo from my mother. Bank transfer attempts. IP access timestamps. Sequence, always sequence. My mother's policy was updated 1 month before her death. Beneficiary increased. Coverage extended. And the attempted claim was submitted at 9:12 a.m. The hospital records showed her cardiac arrest at 1:47 p.m. 4 hours later, 4 hours. That detail changed everything. Because no one files an insurance claim 4 hours before a death, unless they believe it's imminent, or they plan for it. I called the insurance company directly. I didn't mention suspicion. I asked neutral questions. When a claim is submitted prematurely, what typically triggers that? The representative hesitated. Usually automated systems don't allow pre-certification without confirmation. So how was it submitted? Manual override. Manual override. That requires authorization credentials and multi-factor confirmation from the policyholder's registered device. I looked at my mother's old phone on the table. The phone Ethan said had malfunctioned. The phone he claimed wouldn't power on. I plugged it in. It powered immediately. Battery at 62%, no malfunction. I entered her passcode. She had changed it months ago. But I knew my mother. She never used birthdays. She used patterns. I tried the last 4 digits of the trust account, unlocked. Inside her messages was nothing suspicious. But inside her authenticator app, there it was. A login confirmation at 9:09 a.m., 3 minutes before the insurance claim submission. My pulse slowed, not sped up. Slowed, because certainty removes panic. Someone used her phone, inside the house. That morning, I called the hospital next. Asked for visitor logs. Ethan had signed in at 8:40 a.m. He left at 9:25. My mother coded at 1:47 p.m. I felt the cold clarity settle in. He filed a claim before she died, left the hospital, and expected the rest to happen naturally. Cardiac condition, pre-existing, convenient, but premature claim submission? That's not grief, that's projection. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because there was one thing missing: intent. Insurance greed proves motive. Premature filing proves expectation. But expectation alone isn't murder, it's arrogance. Unless there's something else. I returned to the external hard drive. There was one folder I hadn't opened. It was encrypted, labeled only, timing. My breath caught. I entered the same pattern code. It opened. Inside was a single file, security footage, from the house, kitchen camera. She had installed one quietly after the trust access attempt. I pressed play. The timestamp read 8:58 m.m. My mother was seated at the table. Ethan stood beside her, holding a pill organizer. I watched silently. He placed a glass of water in front of her. She looked hesitant. He said something I couldn't hear. The camera had no audio. She took the pills. He watched, not lovingly, not worried, watching. 3 minutes later, he picked up her phone, typed, paused, typed again. That timestamp matched 9:09. Authenticator confirmation. He set the phone back down. She leaned back in her chair, looking tired. He checked his watch. Then the footage ended. I stared at the screen. My hands were steady, too steady, because now there was something more than greed. There was sequence, medication, phone access, insurance submission, departure, death. 4 hours later, was it poisoning? Was it overdose? Or was it nothing but coincidence wrapped in arrogance? I needed medical confirmation. I called the cardiologist listed in her file, asked directly, were there any medication adjustments the week before her death? Silence. Then, yes. There was a new prescription, added. By whom? Her son picked it up. What was it? A beta blocker. High dosage? High enough that, combined with dehydration, it could destabilize rhythm. My throat tightened. Was that dosage standard? I asked. Another pause. It was higher than typical starting range. Who approved it? It was electronically authorized. Authorized. By who? The prescription log showed physician approval, but the dosage selection? Submitted online, through her patient portal, at 7:41 m.m. The same morning. I sat in complete silence. Because this wasn't impulsive. This wasn't rage. This was calculated acceleration. He didn't need to kill her directly. He only needed to push her condition toward inevitability, increase dosage, ensure compliance, file claim. Wait, and if it happened that day? Perfect. If not, it would eventually. That's how plausible deniability works. I called Callahan. I need you to review something urgently, I said. He listened, didn't interrupt. When I finished, he didn't react emotionally. He said, forward me the footage. I did. Minutes passed. Then his voice came back, tighter now. Ava, this is no longer a state litigation. I didn't respond. Do not contact your brother, he continued. We escalate this properly. Escalate. That word carries weight. Within 48 hours, a formal review was initiated. Insurance fraud investigation, medical prescription audit, digital access tracing. Ethan thought the second envelope was the worst of it. He had no idea what my mother recorded. He called me that night. Are you satisfied? He asked calmly. His voice was controlled, still confident. You made your point at the will reading. I said nothing. He continued. You embarrassed me. Embarrassed. That word, not hurt, not grieving, embarrassed. That wasn't my intention, I said evenly. He laughed softly. You always overthink things, Ava. Overthink. Another familiar word. But this time I let him finish. Because people reveal everything when they think you've already lost. You don't actually believe I'd hurt Mom, he said. I stayed silent, and silence makes liars nervous. Say something, he snapped. That was the crack. Just a small one. You filed an insurance claim before she died, I said calmly. The line went completely still. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied. Too fast. You increased her dosage, I continued. Breathing on the other end changed. He recovered quickly. She was sick, she was stable. You're twisting things. And then he said the sentence that ended it. I just didn't want delays. Delays. That's what he called her, death. A delay. I closed my eyes. Authorities are reviewing everything, I said. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He went quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when someone realizes the timeline no longer belongs to them. Weeks later, formal charges were filed. Insurance fraud. Medical tampering investigation. The word homicide wasn't used immediately. Because medicine is complex. Because courts move slowly. But sequence is powerful, and intent is visible in sequence. At the final hearing, Ethan didn't look at me. Not once. He looked smaller. Not because of shame, because of collapse. The inheritance he thought he secured? Frozen. The insurance payout? Denied. The estate? Under investigation. He didn't lose because of emotion. He lost because of timing. And timing leaves fingerprints. When the judge finalized asset protection orders, I didn't feel victorious. I felt precise. My mother didn't leave me revenge. She left me documentation. She knew something was wrong, and she left a trail. The second envelope was never the end. It was the warning. The real evidence was always going to be time-stamped. People think betrayal is loud. It isn't. It's quiet. It's subtle adjustments. It's dosage changes. It's claims filed too early. It's confidence built on assumption. They thought the decision was final. They thought death ended the review. They were wrong. Because when someone believes you won't look, they stop hiding properly, and that's when they lose. Ethan once told me something when we were younger. You always wait too long to speak. He was right. I do wait. Because when you let people finish talking, they confess, and when you let them finish acting, they expose. He thought the will reading was the climax. It wasn't, it was the beginning. The real mistake wasn't it greed. It was impatience. He couldn't wait for nature, so he tried to accelerate it, and in doing so, he created proof. I didn't scream. I didn't celebrate. I didn't give him the reaction he always expected. I simply handed over the timeline and watched it close around him, because the truth doesn't need drama. It only needs sequence, and sequence never lies. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to The Final Evidence, because every lie leaves proof.